Getting ourselves ready. The overwhelm, gonna let it fill up a little bit. I'm gonna gambit my cards, play my cards like I'm gambit. The overwhelm is the sweetest part of the death. The anxiety perfection. The overwhelm is the sweetest part of the death. The anxiety, the anxiousness, the grief. These are the sweetest points of the death. The trigger, the emotional aspect. All of these encompass the isolated reactions. Yeah. We're gonna wait for it to fill up a little bit. Ooh, child. I want to see something. Switching. Doo-doo-doo. 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 Watch it myself. It's weird. Isolated reaction. In order to trust the process, 1 second. Let's make the in order to trust the process, one must remove all expectations. In order to truly trust the process and experience, one must learn to remove their expectations. Everything down here isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. It's helping you remove or assess those expectations, those aspects within self that have not yet been categorized or defined that are within those layers of self. When one looks for or tries to put a value on something that is external, by nature, it changes the value. The value is the lesson. The value is the lesson. So if I keep putting conditions on the external things that come into my space, when they come in there, even if I don't, and tonight we don't get into the aspects of the reaction time, looking at how shit's happening down here, why it's happening the way it's happening, and understanding these time loops in the aspects of trying to keep things. We have to understand that everything down here is the basis of destruction. It's always in duality. So whether you are pro-life or pro-death, they both exist under the same condition. Not the external condition or standard. Everybody deserves this or everybody's entitled. It's under the emotional aspect. It's always the emotion that gets you tied into the attachment to something. That's what stops you from allowing the process, or when you say certain things and not understanding what it really is on a higher sense of it, really don't look at it. I remember looking at Bobby Hemmett, like The Metaphysics of Sex. And I remember he broke down love as a destructive force. It forces you, if you've ever been in the true aptitudes of even a fraction of love, then you understand that it forces you to remove layers of yourself. So we talked about that Wednesday on the God Hour show, talking about the aspects of infatuation, or to keep this trauma bond going based on the pattern that sets your behaviors and your tones. Therefore, you're always able to react with every space that you go into. You're doing it all. You setting this tone, you setting your pace, you setting your tone, you setting it up. But the key for us to understand now is, are you doing it based on a certain pattern? I.e., you haven't integrated with that part of your shadow. You haven't dealt with that traumatic event to the full. You haven't came to the point of, because I broke it down, like the simplicity of it is, once I always ask this question to my clients, I always ask this question in consultations. Have you gotten, like, they'll be like, whether it's the end of a relationship, the end of a job, this fear in some things, and the overwhelm. The one thing that you understand is the overwhelm, the anxiety, the whatever feelings coming up, that's the best part of the death. That's the best part of your death. That's what you're feeling at that moment in time. Remember, the trigger is forcing you to become emotionally present. It's pulling your ass right into the space. It is showing you how you have not been emotionally present. rather than you staying in a state of emotional relevance. That's why the emotional relevance is within your pattern. So give a simple explanation. Give a simple example. You start your job. You're infatuated with your new job. It's different than any other job that you ever worked. They let you work. They're more organized. Something's there to pull you into that space, that attracted you to that space. Something's there that you haven't received before. That's why you light up into that space, the attention. Now, a couple months go by, maybe a year goes by, maybe a month, maybe 2 years go by before you actually say you have a demand for some shit. Let's say you want to take some time off or something along those lines. They tell you can't take the time off. The first thing that you go to is, and even if they give you the reason why, well, it's Valentine's Day or it's a birth, whatever it is, whatever reason they gave you was the reason that you needed. But you looked at yourself and you immediately went to another point in your mind of where that happened. The more emotion that you feel in it, the deeper that you go. The more anxiety, the more doubt, the more trust, the more betrayal, whatever it is, the deeper you go back into your mind to go pull that memory. But if I'm doing it based on reaction, I'm trying to categorize it with that. That means I'm trying to categorize it with every other time. It don't matter what, I now realize, because I'm now aware, that there's a difference between awareness and self-awareness, difference between you self-reflecting and self-reflecting. There's layers to that shit. And all you understanding which layer which point that you at is going to help you define where you're going and what you're doing based on your internal work. All of this shit boils down to your internal work. All of this is synonymous with your shadow work, your traumas. Over the last couple of months, we've been getting deep into the aspects of everything created in your space based on your traumatic experiences, based on the things that you've been through, based on these insights. That's what you use to create your space in the land of duality, in the land of the destruction. So everything you bring forth is to destroy something. Period. Everything you bring forth is to destroy something. So now it makes you start thinking about your humanity. Now it makes you start thinking about the decisions that you made that you thought were not the best decisions, and you still trying to live with them. You're still trying to put it onto something. Well, I did this because of this, and if this happened, if we only went, it's like, think about it like this when you're thinking about your direction in the car. If we stopped by the gas station, or if we went left instead of right, or if we went and purchased, if we went and got the navigation system, or if you were navigating or paying attention, you'll always find a reason to belong to that emotional relevance that was already present, as long as you ain't taking ownership. Ownership in self. The reflections within self, the self-reflecting, the becoming self-aware, the allowing yourself to feel that shit, the understanding of removing all expectations and understanding that your standard dwarfs all expectations. You notice that the more expectations that you had, the less and less your standards were, because you kept putting values on something external. But in order to maintain that in your mindset, you had to create it from somewhere inside of your mind. It had to be based on something. It had to be based off some story you keep telling yourself. It had to be based on some type of story that you kept telling yourself over and over and over again. Think about how many stories you told yourself ever since the traumatic event happened. Think about how many different stories that you kept telling yourself when shit happened. So now think about all of those multiple thoughts, all of those multiple perception points, and all those points got to be preserved in some way, shape, or form. So this is why when you shedding layers and things start popping up, you're like, I never even thought about this. I never thought about that. Man, I didn't know I did all that. Think about the conversations that you had. Think about why you have the conversations that you have. Think about what they're rooted in. Think about it if you sitting here in your space, 9 times out of 10, and this is what I had to realize for myself earlier on in my shadow work was the more trauma or the more things that were coming to the surface was based on the shit that I kept trying to create to sustain myself in that space. I wasn't allowing the space to be fully destroyed because my idea of destruction was over. It's over. My idea of destruction was the same idea with death. After death, there's nothing more. Even when I went in between that, from death, there's nothing. After death, there's nothing. There's no such thing as heaven and hell. There's no Jesus. There's no devil. So then I had to keep going further. But if you keep coming back here. Think about every movie and every show that you watch that has white people in it. White people in it. There's nothing on the other side. It's darkness. Can I go back into there's nothing behind you. I've said this many times before. There's nothing behind you. If you keep looking behind you, the only thing that's similar to when you're doing into your shadow work, and we getting deep into these aspects of your shadow work. Every time you go and deal with one of the events that happened in your life, that means you bring it to the surface. That means whether you brought it to the surface based on reaction. My last boyfriend yelled. My last boyfriend lied. My last girlfriend lied. My wife lied. My mother lied. Whatever it is. Every time you bring that shit to the forefront, this thought to the forefront, are you assessing it or are you using it? Are you assessing or are you using it? How are you using it? Is it a point for you to reflect or is it a point for you to project? This is how we get stuck in outside of our mindsets. Automatic knee-jerk reaction. You stuck, I'm going to keep acting this way every single time because every time I act this way during this time, it sounds about right. You only acknowledging your comfort. Remember, reaction is comfort. In order for me no longer to be comfortable, that means I must walk away from reaction. That means I must stop reacting. In order for me to stop reacting, in order to achieve my patience, I got to understand the pace or the emotional underline that controls my pace. Once I understand the emotional underline that controls my pace of why I do the things that I do and create the pattern and behaviors and the habits, then I got to go back to the moment that started that first ticking, that gave that idea a heartbeat, that gave that experience a heartbeat, gave it its senses, gave it its feelings. You're the universe. Therefore, you create your universe. So everything in your universe is based on what? What's of the absolute of the darkness. Your whole entire universe is based on what's in your darkness. Your whole world is based on what's in your darkness. That's why that's where I was getting. Every time you go back, you only can pull up the behavior. You only can pull up the pattern. You only can pull up the habit. Think about it with an addiction, and you haven't got to the root of your addiction. Anything that triggered you based on that original addiction is still playing. That means the shadows are still there, still in the fractured space. However, the shit that you're interested in, almost guaranteed that you're doing it based on somebody else, another shadow aspect that you attach to within your life. No such thing as good and bad, it's positive and negative. I had a client came to me. I had a client earlier on in the year come to me and they were talking about, I stopped smoking all of a sudden. I was like, why? They were like, because I realized that my smoking was connected to stress. And the more stress that I took on, the more that I smoked. But most of the times, I listened to one of your joints and you were talking about the reflection and everything outside. So I was like, if I start removing these stresses, then I would go try to do something else. I was like, yeah, because you're just trying to fill the void you're just trying to fill the emotional void. Everything that you're doing based on not doing your internal work is going to be trying to fill an emotional void, a safety net, so you don't fall, so you don't take the full dip into the darkness. You want to keep, I want to stay this person, this person, this was my strongest identity that I created. This is the strongest identity that I created. Okay, cool. In order to maintain that identity, everything has to remain the same. Everything got to keep you reacting. Everything got to keep your identity isolated so you can keep the reaction going and keep that identity going. Everything. I don't care what you do. Peace, peace. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you feel about it. I talked about it in the podcast. I don't care how you feel, what you think, how you taste. I don't care about any of those aspects. And you saying whatever age you are right now. Don't care. I don't care if you say you're in your late 30s, early 30s, late 40s, early 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't care what age that you say that you are in this physical aspect. Don't care. If there is internal shit that you are aware of and you aren't dealing with it, you're that age. Now, if you're not aware of it, or if you can't seem to get to the point with it, no matter what, I don't see nothing wrong with it, then you might be an autonomous byproduct of duality down here in this space. It's time to see where you're really at. That internal work. Until I started taking my internal work seriously, I couldn't trust the process. When I was bullshitting with my internal work or treating my internal work like it was a regular 9-to-5 job, then I expected results. I still had expectance. I still had entitlements. I still had expectancy. I still had a lot of shit that was sitting on the table that I could use to keep myself willingly distracted. Willingly, I stayed distracted in those spaces. Therefore, when the overwhelm came up, when the overwhelm, the anxiousness came up, the doubts came up, the insecurities came up, I could put them into something external. Instead of understanding that I need to sit my ass still. Everything's being shown to me every fucking time. Everything's being shown to me when I need it. I said I was this. I say that I'm great. Why am I great? If I understand that everything down here is based in the duality or within destruct, everything down here is inherently flawed anyway. This is an inherently flawed cipher. Cipher. Everything down here goes through seasons. Everything down here has to change. Everything down here has to die. Everything has to be recharged. Ain't nothing down here gonna be in this everlasting cycle of itself. And the more and more shit I got carried on me, the more and more shit I got in there, the harder and harder it is for me to jump and then jump back. Because I only can jump to where I went to. So that's when you talk about the astral, you getting stuck in shit. You only can jump to what the fuck is what you are part of. You can dream all day and say, "Ooh, I'm from this realm and I'm from that place." You probably can't. You never even going to be able to get there because you ain't waiting for the overwhelm to hit you. I remember the first time embracing the overwhelm. I remember the first time embracing the beauty of being overwhelmed. The true beauty of being overwhelmed. I remember the first time embracing the true beauty of being overwhelmed. When I embraced that shit, it changed everything. Because once I embraced it, I knew I could go sit there. See, when we get overwhelmed, we get anxious, we get upset, we get in this reaction state, we go tap at it. All right, that's what overwhelm is. Similar when you were little, that's hot, that's cold. But you never ask yourself, why is that hot? Why is that cold? So later on down your life, you learn why that's cold, and the colder it is, it keeps your ice cream cold. The hotter that gets, the faster it, the better, now you're thinking the colder it is, the more colder your food's going to stay. Then the hotter it is, the faster your food's going to cook. Then you had to learn the different elements of when shit had to be cold. And you know anything, if something's super hot, if something's cooked above 150 fucking degrees, and then you got to cool it, it got a certain amount of time for it to cool the fuck down. And you know, it got to be submerged in something and get down to 70 degrees at a certain point in time. So you learn the variables. Same thing with something was hot. You understood that a rolling boil, well, I understand that a rolling boil is at 112 degrees and a full boil is at 135 degrees, full boil. But in between that, that's the variables. That's stuck in between the rifts. So I know what to do based on reaction. So I know what to do based on the pattern. But the deeper and deeper that I got into myself, the more I understood, oh damn, I'm just creating the same fucking pattern. I'm not really doing any work. It's like if you sit down in your fucking living room and you throw the clothes in the washer and you wash clothes all day. You told yourself all day you wash clothes. Even though the washer did most of the work and the dryer did most of the work. All you did was sit down. But every time you sat down with a load of clothes you took out of the dryer, you sat them down in front of you. And you kept telling yourself, I'm going to get you all drying all of the, folding up all of the clothes when I get them all dry. But then you started seeing how big the pile got. Then you got anxious. You got overwhelmed because you kept putting it off. That's what it's like that's what it's like to not trust the process that you set in place. That's what it is when you don't have the discipline that you didn't set in place. That's the equivalent of you not doing your internal work. Your internal work reflecting everything that you do inside of your space. Whether you want to try to stay emotionally relevant or you actually become emotionally present. But your higher self is going to force you to become emotionally present. A lot of y'all are being experienced that emotional presence now. Every time you become present, you must become a presence to the layer. Where are you at? Where are you at really? Relevance has you reflect. Presence forces you to become self-reflective. I spend long periods of time self-reflecting. I don't really have to reflect anymore because me being in a state of self-reflection, it naturally, I've been watching, what anime? I've been watching Hunter x Hunter for the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. The isolated reaction is just that. It's like you're trying to see the event. You're trying to break the event down in your mind to make it make sense. You're breaking down the event solely for the purpose to react. You're not breaking down the event because if I'm breaking down, like if I break down an event and I break down this event now, I'm not trying to see myself in each point of the event as the emotional aspect. I'm not trying to avoid the emotion. Therefore, if I see a killing on the news and then the events keep unfolding, I have to use that same energy or that same conduit to continue to move through that isolated place, move through that space so I can stay isolated, so I can stay moving through the space. So I'm learning how to transmute now, just like if I see a killing on the news, even though I don't really watch the news, or I hear about somebody getting killed, I can have the same exact response I had to somebody dying, I have to somebody being birthed. Same exact response. I understand and I'm aware it's the same exact response. The same feelings come up, the same thoughts come up. Ain't no different. Because I'm not trying to live in, oh my God, because now I can embrace the law, the example of to give and take in that aspect of that balance. This must be removed in order for something to come into that space. Because until we go to that point with ourselves of becoming whole or removing your fractures or understanding aspects of your shadows, now you're sitting there like, but man, I don't want that. But it's going to, you'll always be in the thought process of like, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time because you're looking at everything based on your pattern. If your pattern's based in fear, everything's going to take a lot of work. If your pattern's based in that fear narrative, insecurity, jealousy, doubt, you're always going to find something external to set that course in your timeline. Naomi Campbell just had her first baby. Bitch is over 50. Most people that you see being millionaires or billionaires or coming into money, them motherfuckers was over damn near 30, over damn near 40 before they actually had it. But now the pendulum is swung into the category of you're seeing the young people, like motherfuckers that are 12, 11, 13, 14, 16, barely breaking their 40s, and they getting them bags in the millions. What does that tell you about yourself? Either way, you're gonna react the same exact way. You're gonna look at that infomercial at 2:00 in the AM and 2:00 in the morning, and you're gonna see that dumbass idea. You'll be like, man, I need to put together my own damn idea. And then you're gonna go to Walmart based on you holding that thought in your mind. This is how you hold thoughts in your mind. You're gonna go to Walmart and you're gonna go down to As Seen on TV aisle, or you go to Walgreens, CVS, or wherever you see an as seen on TV idea, and you'll see all of that shit lined up on that damn shelf. That's what you do with your thoughts. Those are your emotional voids. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Those are those emotional voids you keep trying to fill. As seen on TV. You saw somebody else doing it, but you didn't understand the process to do it. You're not willing to break the pattern. So you damn near ain't going ready to plan. I don't care what you do. If you're not willing to actually do or go to the limit and everything comes in your space, some of the most destructive thoughts that you've ever had or things that you had to do based on survival, that was your out. That was the lesson. Similar to how you were born in the same concession, that was your out. That was the way in or your lesson. The same way out is the same way in. That's why the same way out is the same way in. That's why they say you got to get back. Bobby Hemmett always talked about you got to get back to your childlike innocence. And you got to relieve yourself of the childlike mind. The childlike mind is the imprint. The childlike innocence is the impact. That's like if you look at a kid, if you go right now, if you don't have kids and you went to the park tomorrow and you saw some kid standing up, there's going to be one kid that's going to climb to the top of the jungle gym and is going to jump head first into the sand. And is going to laugh and smile and even if they're hurt for a second, they're going to laugh and they're going to smile. That's where you're getting back to. Your fear of jumping. As long as I have a fear of jumping, I'll always need something in my space to push me to jump. And then since it gave me the jump, I'm going to try, based on trauma bonding, I'm trying to try to keep that in the space so I can keep making the jump. So I never make the jump by myself. Something always has to be there. Something always has to empower the identity. That way I have something to blame when it fails. That way I have something to put it on if I felt like I was dishonored or distrusted. I always have something to put it on. Why? Because I'm trying to isolate the reaction. If I keep the reaction isolated into something else, then I ain't gotta feel it. I can keep the same pattern, I can keep staying the same distorted version of myself. I can keep distorting my reality and keep living in the same reality and doing the same shit over and over and over again. Here's the thing. You're always gonna go back. I've talked about this in earlier lectures. When you revert back to your old self. But every time you revert, you always revert back to a lesser and lesser version. It's like if you were in a relationship for like years. The years don't even matter. Whether you was in a relationship for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, every time you go out of that chamber that you've created, you feel like time passed you by. You always try to go catch up. You're always trying to catch back up to your old identity, to the identity. The same, you always go back to try to, all of the emotional voids that cannot be filled inside of that space based on your expectations, you go try to fill somewhere else. The only thing that becomes more in depth is based on the traumatic experience that keeps you locked within that space. I.e., you've been looking for a father all your damn life. I.e., you've been looking for a mother your whole damn life. So that every relationship that you get into, you're ultimately looking for a replacement for your father in acceptance before you can do anything else. You're ultimately looking for a mother before you do anything else. That's what the trauma bond of the baseline is. The things that you struggled to do or you did based on conditions or running game, whether it was you could wash clothes really, really well, or you could cook food, or you could suck souls out, or you can eat souls away or blow out backs. You try to use that as that was your opening play because that's all the fuck you had. That's all you had was your opening play. The same opening play that your mom had. The same opening play that your dad had. The same opening play that your grandparents had. Your uncle, your aunt, whoever raised you. The same opening play that they've used is the same opening play that you're using. Hell, and if I'm only using those, if I only can use from what's from my unseen to create my space in order for me to stay functioning, then what do you think? Think about every decision that you've ever made up to this point. Was it a decision based on you, or was it a decision based on a fractured to keep feeding a shadow? Whatever decision that you made, the underlying or the shame, the guilt, the insecurity, the doubt, the work, whatever it is that you feel and that you're still holding on to, is still based on how you felt back then. You just keep magnifying it. So whether you had kids when you were young, and then they got taken away by the system, or whatever system had to take them away from you, and now you feeling that doubt and insecurity, that only goes back to how you felt about your mother. Because now on both sides of the end, you're like, my mother could have gave us away. But on the other end, you're like, I can never see myself doing that. You've done it. You've seen it. It's like if you got a whole ass friend and they have no worth in themselves, and that's how they find attachment. And you can say to yourself, I never can see myself being a hoe. I never can see myself doing that OnlyFans shit. You're already doing it. You're just from you're at the different end of the perspective. You're already doing that. The same way that they find value in multiple niggas and multiple bitches to fill that emotional void is the same reason, the same way that you do the same shit in your life. Uh-huh. Yes. Exactly. It's taking, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like the work is taking what is appreciate what is coming, appreciate what has happened. Because without it, you couldn't be in the position that you in. But you got to remove that bias from it. Like you can't tap into your power and your energy while you still holding on to certain biases and certain mechanics. Because you're only going to be performing you got to perform. I got to dance to get this. I got to do this to get this. Okay, cool. That's the variable that you set. So now you must live by that variable until you decide why I created that variable in the first place. The thing with a lot of the thing that happened to me earlier on was even when I was doing the earlier aspects of my knowledge of myself, even when I was doing the knowledge of myself, I can read a book. I was still trying to apply it to the whole variable. Still no ownership. Still didn't change the mentality. Still didn't address the emotional aspects, the psychological aspects. So every time that I felt overwhelmed, every time that I felt overly anxious, every time I felt the anxiety is because I was not settled in the point. I am the object. I am the subject. I'm the subject and I'm the object. I'm the experiment. The vessel that is my avatar is the experiment. Either I'm going to be performing these experiments or someone else is going to be performing the experiments. Either way, there will be an experiment that I must observe. Either I'm doing it to myself or somebody else is going to do it. But if I get stuck in the survival, I'm always going to lean towards they trying to hurt us and they ain't nobody thinking about you. Ain't nobody thinking about you. And the only way you can make someone think about you is they become emotionally attached to you in some way, shape, or form. And the only way that someone can stay emotionally attached to you is based on how you set the tone and how they attach to you. That's why when that shit goes away, you don't know how to feel. That's when all the doubt and all the insecurities and all the feelings come up. They don't love me. They don't love me. They don't need me. Because you got used to a certain reaction. So when you ain't getting the reaction no more, you feel like there's no purpose. You feel like there's no point. You feel like there's nothing to preserve. Exactly. I'm going to let you know now. Exactly. There's nothing to preserve. There's nothing to project into. There's nothing to, what are you trying to preserve? At the end of the day, because whatever point, what are you trying to preserve? If you still got the trauma still there, what are you trying to preserve? The identity, the void to keep yourself in that space so you can keep maintaining the same bullshit. But you noticing every time you go back to it, it ain't the same no more. Your job, right? Everybody's job right now is in some shamble type shit. Everybody's job is in some shambles. Everything that you said you got that job for is now at the surface. I got my job for the house, and you just kept creating things for it. Okay, duality, it creates its own spectrum. So you ain't even got to be there. Remember last week we talked about the imitations. You ain't even got to be there anymore because you already created the space for it. Every company in America fucked up right now. And you think it's about you. No. You thinking it's about you. No. The world is reacting to you, not The world is reacting to you. It ain't you're not reacting to the world. The world's reacting to you. But it's reacting to the true aspects of you. It ain't reacting to the identity you keep trying to hold up. I was a good employee. Job don't give a fuck about you being an employee. Because they paid you for every hour that you were a fucking employee. It let you, just like your job lets you bullshit at work. Your job lets you take the days off that needed to be taken off. And if you didn't take them off and then you sat in your space, I never took any days off. But now, in order for you not to take any days off, guess what? In that space, in the duality, motherfuckers got to be fucking lazy. That's the only way you can exist in the space, as saying you're a hard worker and maintaining that identity. That's why every single time that it happens, you have a couple of moments with yourself like, why can't I do what they do? Because it's not you. What if you did do it? So take it even crazy and change your perspective. Even though you're not doing it at your job, you're doing it somewhere else. That's because the slot's full. It ain't because it's not you. It's because the slot's full somewhere else. You're already doing it somewhere else. Whether it's a multitude of places or one in particular place, you're already doing it somewhere else. That's why you can't do it there. That's why you can't see it there. You only can see what the fuck you focus on. So if I only focus on this isolated reaction of what's going on right here, it's like when you look at, it's like when you go to fucking, if you go overseas and you see how they react to Americans and black people, we love 50 Cent. Or you go to Asia, we love 50 Cent. We love the baby. Peace. We love the baby. We love 50 Cent. We love the rap. We see the rappers, you gangster. Because in their space, they're acting as one way, and autonomously, the only way that they can see something outside of them is based on what's shown to them or what they could see. And that becomes the entire aspect of the identity created within that space. How do you see yourself? How do you feel yourself there? How do you taste yourself being inside of that space? How do you maintain that space? Are you maintaining it based on reaction? Or are you maintaining it based on response? 9 times out of 10, you maintaining it based on a fear of destroying some shit. You fear to destroy some shit. You're using it as a focus point, like, I'm going to go do this so I can get this, this, and this. Take away what the fuck you trying to get. That's when the plan comes up. That's when the purpose comes up. That's when the true potential comes up. That's when the power comes up. Your power is based on your authority inside of the space, whether it's good or bad, not based on a sense of control. So if you go back and look at the difference between the actual unity of the marriage versus the wedding, for an example. Like if you think about the wedding aspect, think about the wedding party itself. In a wedding party, you got the bride and the groom, the best man, the bridesmaid, and then you probably got like some, what are them bitches called? The bridesmaid and the groomsman. If you look at the lineup in that aspect, you're seeing the different aspects of that person now coming into one. So that's the wedding party. Most of us only are doing this wedding party shit. So you look at the timeline. Think about the timeline with this. I talked about this in the polygamy lecture. When you think about polygamy and everybody talk about polygamy is the way to go, nigga, you still avoiding integrating with your shadow. You still trying to feed the necessities of your shadow. because two become one. Two become one in a marriage. But if I'm my masculine and my feminine aspects, I'm my masculine and my feminine aspects, I am the God, therefore I am an androgynous being. I am a Titan, therefore I'm androgynous. That means my masculine and my feminine energies got to be in balance. So every space that I go into based on being fractured because of my traumas, I'm not in balance. All of that shit need to be fed at that table. So now you start understanding. Now you can start looking at your emotional wounds and what each emotional wound or each emotional void is meant there, what you have it there for. So now you look at yourself as I'm super selfless, and then we get into the psychological sense, we get into the psychological aspects, and then you start thinking about, oh my God, well I'm a helper and I'm a doer and I don't really care about my appearance and I don't really care about myself in that space. I'm making sure everybody else is good. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. That's why you go so hard at it. That's why you're going to naturally overly do that aspect because it helps you maintain that identity or that image. Because I can guarantee, even in your thoughts, you look at your phone and your homegirl or your homeboy call you at 2:00 in the a.m. and you have that thought in your head, I'm not answering the phone, or it's going to be something stupid. The best decision that you made because you went to sleep, had the best sleep ever. You had the best sleep ever. You were emotionally present and you had the best sleep ever. But you didn't capitalize on it. You woke up the next morning and you checked your phone anyway. You woke up the next morning and checked your phone to see if they called you, to see if they were okay. You automatically checked. Why? Why? Because that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my homegirl. Why? What memory are you still connected to? Because that's what I want them to do to me. Now ask yourself the other side of that question. Have they ever did it to themselves? Like every time something happened to you, now even when you go into that, because I remember when I was going through it with my man and they were there for me. They've always been there for me every time I went through some shit with somebody else. They've always been a feeding ground for my emotional bias to keep acting the way that I've been acting. What if just maybe the reason I keep going into these positions is because I need to learn some shit? What if I need to learn some shit in that space? What am I not learning? What am I running away from? Uh-huh. What am I running away from? What am I still trying to avoid? What am I still trying to fix? Because I only can do it based on the surface. I only can react based on the surface. Because to go within the depths of myself is a scary ass place. If I go into the depths, it's gonna be scary. It's gonna force me to learn some shit I don't want to learn yet. But you got shit in your space that's already doing it for you. This shit's working for you, not against you. That's why I remember the first time that I heard motherfuckers was talking about, hey, yo, you got to go get this new paperwork. And so I got to get more paperwork. So I got to get more paperwork. And then I'm still not moving. Or I could sit in my house. I could sit where I'm at and make decisions based on response and not reaction. Or I can sit in my house and make decisions based on response and not reaction. Because with a response, I can plan. With a reaction, I only have the information that's in front of me. So I can create, if I can create one LLC, that means I can multiply it. So if I can create God.co Alchemist LLC as my example, if I can create God.co Alchemist LLC, and under God.co Alchemist LLC is the media, the platform, everything from the counseling, the speaking, everything that I do now, that means I can create another entity because I'm deifying myself. I can create another fucking entity to house the property. I can create another entity to house the money. I can create another, I can just keep creating these motherfuckers. They're not attached to anything. It's my attachments that stop me from creating. So what am I trying to create, really? So if I create based in my traumas, I'm creating based on trying to feel some shit. I'm not happy. Ooh, I'm going to go do this because I'm not happy. That's my definition of happiness. Now I must maintain that. But the key of you doing this internal work is getting back to the original time that you did that shit. And that opens up every relationship. That opens up everything that you've ever done. And that's what motherfuckers are scared to do. That's why you'll look at who's in the news now? Pro-lights in the news now? You'll look at, oh my God, I took that nigga class for cryptocurrency. I can't believe he did all those things. You'll trash everything that you learned from this nigga over the last how many years that this nigga spoke on? You'll throw all that shit away. Just like you did the R. Kelly. Just like you did the R. Kelly CD. Mm-hmm. You'll keep throwing it away because you're not applying it to your own origin. You can't tap into that level of thought yet. That's why it's present. We're only vessels. I'm only a vessel. The more and more open I am to myself, the more and more permeant I am as that vessel. That strength of that aspect coming out of me. No biased. Keep letting it hit you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Y'all, oh my God. Because you still afraid to become that shit. You still afraid to become what the fuck you need to become. You scared of this. Most motherfuckers are scared of that destructive process. I woke up the other day and I was like, and I've thought about this many a fucking times. I was like, the aging is stopped. The aging is stopped for me. So everything I thought about age don't mean shit. Everything that I attached to the variables of age don't mean shit. That means all of the ways for me to gain access to new information are now open. Go watch Hunter x Hunter. I'm open. I'm open. I'm fully receptive. They sit out there. I'm open. I'm aware. I'm self-aware. Everything that comes in is automatically going to be based on self-awareness. Everything that comes in is going to be based on self-reflection. I'm no longer going to feed into a space based on, because that void's not there. There's one thing to come into the understanding based on the intellectual aspect. I can see that. I can, but it's a whole nother thing to be able to feel it. Imagine taking an X pill and being able to feel everything. Psychedelic, being open to everything. You're only going to be open to your level of where you're at. No matter what you do, you still going to be sitting in the same exact space. Sitting in the same exact space. For some people, when I've done clients, put them under psychedelics, they tell me that they feel that there's an echo, like they're like in a chamber, and I gotta walk them through the chamber process. Other people who had that same effect, they feel like, oh my God, I can. That's your death. You got to go through death to go to any process. Before you go anywhere, before you off to somewhere else, something has to die. Something got to be set there something has to pay a toll at that point in order for you to cross into that space. That's the only way you identify within that space. But what if you stop worrying about how you're identified inside of that space? Could you still get there? If you took away the identity that you thought you had to maintain to be a millionaire, could you get there? Would you get there faster or would you get there slower? Don't fucking matter. Because now you got to make a plan. Same thing that's stopping you is the same thing that is helping you. But you don't know how to use it. Because you got to let go of it first. You got to let go of whatever the fuck's holding you into that space. Whatever addictive participles or whatever addictive aspects you clamored together to create that identity, you got to let go of that shit first in order to even understand it. Because you use it as a crutch. Like a motherfucker that goes through the process, you've been a fucking alcoholic, but you ain't never understood why. And every time you let go of it, the thing that you feeling when you let go of the addiction or you let go of whatever helps you quit your urge, the thing that you letting go of, that's your death. It's just not in the inanimate object that you gave a face, because everything around you now becomes an inanimate object. Your sister, your mother, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, they are an inanimate object until you program into that space that of what it is. Conversation with my mother is having a conversation with Dorothy. The conversation the conversations I used to have with my mother, I'm now having with Dorothy. Dorothy is a gateway into my records of that life cycle. So every memory that the person that I used to call my mother, because I am now my mother, the person that I go to go get that information only serves as that purpose. Now you understand your purpose and connection to them anyway. The only way that my mother or Dorothy can get in contact with me is by using one of the streams of thought within my memories that I have not yet defined or assessed. That's the only way she exists. That's the only way I exist. If I'm not dealing with it, then I exist still in that space. That's how I connect to her. That's the only way I'm going to connect to her. I remember my birth. Never understood why I remember my birth. And I'm not talking about, I came through the womb. I remember the darkness. I remember being on that little silver strand, looking from up, looking down, following my mother around, following my real father around. That's why it didn't make no sense when I came down here and I saw this totally different man sitting in the space. I'm like, that's not the nigga I've been following around. Make sure that's not the nigga I've been following around. Make sure it's been protected. But I always remembered this eerie ass presence of this eerie ass shadow always being casted every time I was like with my father, trying to look at my mom, make sure my mom was good. But now I understood that I came in through that shadow, that doubt, the insecurity, the proving, the disassociation, the aggressive passiveness. I came in through that shadow. Everything that was present when my mom, when I said, okay, cool, I'm taking this dip down here, every shadow that was present that hovered around my mother based on me coming in will be, if I don't understand those aspects, I'm going to go back out through them same fucking aspects, like in the funeral, when everybody go view the body, all y'all going to view a different fucking version of that motherfucker. You feeling some type of way, whatever emotion you felt as that motherfucker is escaping and going into the astral belt, guess what they gonna be? Going through them same exact emotions. They're attached now to that emotion that you now identified. So now that's how you identify your death. Everything gets you closer and closer to you. You just gotta feel it. You gotta be willing to go through it. You gotta be willing to do the true work. Not sit there like, but I feel even more lost now than I felt before. Why you feel lost? What you scared of? You said you was a god. You said you were a goddess. You went and got the name, but do you know what the fuck we are? Do you know what the fuck you are? You said you went, you said you was ready. You made the pact. You made the decision to come to this point. Do you know what the fuck you are? Do you know what the fuck this means for you? Do you mean all expectations must be destroyed in order for you to embrace the ability to have anything that you desire? Oh, you thought you can get it based on the expectations, huh? Nah. You thought you can keep that memory locked away in that little dark room over there about your mom not listening to you when you told her about what your dad did. Oh, you thought you can keep that hidden, huh? Nah. That's not what we're here for. We're here to destroy. We're here to destroy every ounce of your humanity so you can become balanced to your true self. You want to keep imagining it or you want to live it? Say no gimmick. What you keep seeing in everybody else, you kept seeing the gimmick. You like the gimmick. You like the way it looked. Okay, cool. As long as I can take a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that and a little bit of that under the expectation, because you keep taking shit through expectation. That's what keep getting your ass fucked up. You keep taking it through expectation. That's what gets your ass fucked up. The only thing worse is when you do not say, when you cannot say. The only thing that makes a villain and a good guy is a good guy is that the villain accepts the expectations that it put onto the space, its conditions. The hero is blind to the expectations of themselves and lives in the expectations of others. The villain said, fuck their expectations. The villain looks at their own expectations, devoid of others. But on both sides, both eyes, whether you want to look through the eye of Thoth or whichever eye you want to look through, I'll be left-handed. I'll be right-handed. I'm ambidextrous. your design, who you are, what you are, everything that you did to set yourself up to come down here was for a reason. It wasn't meant for you to stay down here. Mm-hmm. I looked at earlier pictures of myself and why I tried to maintain certain things. And one thing I could not walk away from was the color fucking purple. That's why I'm wearing purple tonight. One thing I cannot walk away from was the color purple and the significance of the color purple. Yeah, I can stay all cute and love and light and be like, purple is the color of royalty. Purple is the color of royalty. Purple is the color of the crown chakra. Got to go deeper. Because remember, everything in the physical is only based on what could be seen or perceived from your spiritual self. So I am not the purple. I am the ultraviolet light of the spectrum of all that into that space. That's why you saw Jimi Hendrix do all those great things. Prince do all of those things. And you keep seeing that color. Oh my God, that shit was amazing. That was the fire. You got to get past your point of you sitting there in that space, you're afraid to get burned. You just keep burning yourself because you're afraid of it. You burn yourself because you're afraid to burn yourself. You will freeze yourself because you fear freezing yourself. You'll stay in that jealousy wound because you're afraid of being truly jealous of yourself. You're only jealous of yourself. You're only insecure of yourself. You're only neglecting of yourself. Everything outside of you is a way for you to experience that feeling that you're afraid to experience the feeling on a lesser note. Because you wouldn't know what to do if you felt it for real anyway. You wouldn't know what to do if you felt real neglect in the realest sense. Neglect is one of the most realest feelings that you've ever felt. That shit is intoxicating as hell. To feel the true... because you gave it a title. You gave it a title and it gave it a duality of being good or bad. You gave it the title. Neglect is bad. Rejection is bad. So I never want to feel neglect, or I never want to feel anything through the stream of neglect or the stream of rejection. I never want to feel shit through the stream of abandonment or the stream of... So guess where you hid yourself? Guess where you hid your true self? Behind the door that you keep calling neglect. Guess where you hid yourself? Behind the layers and the layers of what you said you were overwhelmed. Your anxiousness, your anxiety. You just put yourself behind that door. They'll never get to me because they're afraid to fucking feel it. But I'll just continue to define it. I'll just continue to define it so I can formulate it, so I can create variables and keep existing in the identities, saying that I'm trying to go look for those variables in myself, look for those variables externally, instead of me. Maybe I need to sit my ass down and let it come to me. Everything else has came to me. Oh, wait. I must take accountability for everything that's ever came to me. That's not right because half of this shit's not my fault. Wait, that means it's not my fault anymore. That means fault doesn't exist. Fault was another definition that I created in order to maintain within the comfort. Right or wrong was another thing that I created to stay within the encompassing. So now I push the aspects of what is wrong, even though I'm trying to do right. As long as my intentions are set to be good, I'm going to do this. Even though I know it's wrong, I'm doing it to exist. Everything you ultimately do is to try to fucking exist. You're trying to avoid us, the nothingness. You're trying to avoid where you came from. That's why the ending and the beginning are the same fucking point. They are the same fucking circle. You just keep filling in these blanks in between the ending and your beginning to avoid the ultimate. This lovely feeling that is death. The lovely acceptance that is death. Because every time that you go to sleep, you die. Every time you go to sleep, you die. But if I haven't embraced death when I go away, then everything in my subconscious that comes to me in my subconscious mind, every dream, since I'm not allowing myself to feel death, every dream I'm going to use to the surface. I can't decipher it. Yeah, you can. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. Because you're going to create the need for motherfuckers to string your ass along. Because that's where you find your worth is. Being strung the fuck along. Because in that same instance, you string niggas along. It don't feel good when it happens to you, though. That's what the fuck happens every time it happens. That emotional presence, it's because you seeing yourself doing it. And now you sitting there like, oh my God, I wouldn't allow anybody to do that to me. But you've been doing it the entire fucking time. They were just the example showing you what the fuck you were doing to yourself. That's why it hurt. That's why you try to remain in an emotional attachment with it. You keep trying to go back to the original point. I'm going to go back to a time, but that point that you try to go to is only based on the feeling anyway, that you're trying to feel in that space. So now you're sitting in that space with yourself, as the example, you sitting in that space with yourself, trying to feel that feeling that you felt the first time to do what? Stay relevant. Stay relevant. To keep the identity. You don't want to go too far back because you'll lose the identity. You'll lose everything that you created inside that space to maintain that fucking identity. You don't want to do that. If I do that, then what's next? That means I really got to sit. Yeah. You got to sit down with yourself. We are removing that of what was. Never existed. That of what was never existed. Once you remove that of what was that never really existed, you see that what has actually always been there. That is my gift, and that was one of the gifts that, now that I realize myself being where I'm at now, I now realize why a lot of those gifts were turned the fuck off. Because I wouldn't have known, I would have not known what to do with that gift. I wouldn't have known what to do with that shit if I had it at then. Honestly, this is when you're being this is you being honest with yourself inside of your space. To be able to sit there inside of that space and remove the fault, remove guilt, to remove the abandonment, the neglect. This is what it is to sit in that void, and to allow yourself to come out of that void as what you need to come out of that void as the next level, the next phase. The more shit that you created over your life cycles, the more shit that you will have to go through, because now you're remembering it. You're bringing it back online until you get to that point to where you no longer have to keep going up and down and going through the physical aspect. That's why you see motherfuckers now. That's why you see motherfuckers now still trying to catch shit in their 30s. Because the only thing you can do down here is doing it based on that aspect. That's the only thing you can do down here, is try to catch up to the thought. To the thought. That's why I always say you have to get back to the emotional point. The first puncture within that womb of your birthing, that's the death. You got to get back to that point. The same shit that you faced and created based to that point are now the things that you got to deal with in getting to that point. This is why we're always can tell you, like, yo, the shit that's stopping you from getting into the void is the shit that you put in that space. That's the overwhelmingness. Damn, I got to face that person. I got to face that identity. I got to face who I made myself at that time. I made myself hard at this time. I made myself soft at this point. I made myself extra weak this point. Whatever identity, the heartbeat that I gave that identity, the mindset, I got to face that shit. That's where you face that overwhelm. That's where you face that aspect of yourself. This internal work is meant to destroy. Healing is not this love and light shit that you've been taught to believe. Okay, that was another learned aspect to keep you willing to externalize. That kept you willingly to externalize and look for the result. To look for the next identity, to look for the next aspect. Ooh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and now I'm going to be African. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and now I'm Dominican. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and now I'm Asian. I'm going to do this, this, and this. The same shit that you did when you were little, when you were trying to find your damn identity. You've been sitting in that room ever since. You've been sitting in this room ever since. Where the event happened. You've been sitting there ever since. You never moved. That's why I can take you. I don't got to take you anywhere. That goes behind the aspect of the teacher only takes you back. The truest teacher, the truest teacher only takes you back to you. The truest teacher only takes you back to you. Everything else is everything that you created. the aspects and the fears of your healing. Because you're still trying to, if I heal, then will I still be something? Healing is not based on you still trying to remain some shit. Knowing yourself is not based on you still trying to be some shit. It's not. It's letting all of that shit go. It's understanding all of those aspects and points. Because if I go into a space expecting some shit, think about the results of your current situation. You went into your job expecting some shit. And based on those expectations, you put yourself second or third or fourth or fifth. So is the world really reacting to me or am I reacting to it? The world's reacting to you the entire time. Where you're attached at is where you get triggered to get pulled into that space. This reminds me of when I was 16. I never was really 16. I never was 16. I never was 18. I never was the age. I never experienced my teens because I was a mother or I was a father or I was surviving for my life. That's why I went there. That's why I did it. That's why it felt good for a little bit of time, then it faded away. That's why it felt good. But no matter what I did with it, in order for me to keep doing it, I had to go back to the reality or the other end that I created the reason why. So the only way that exists is if this exists. Both spaces I ain't got to take no responsibility for. So the longer I deflect, the longer I avoid, reject, the longer it exists. The longer I can put my needs into others. The longer I can live within the void. The longer I can keep acting the way that I'm acting. One second. The euphoric joy. The euphoric joy of death. The beauty that is death. The euphoric joy that comes with the death. The transition. The letting go. The removing yourself from the assimilation of yourself. I told myself a long time ago, and I had to live up to that word, that I am never to use my power, or you set the conditions to your death. Or correct, we're going to take that, the connotation of death. If I'm a god, if I'm a goddess, if I am an immortal, if I understand that energy does not die, then in order for me to move freely, I must go through the experiences. I must go through every experience to understand my freedom, not to get stuck. See, the human narrative, we want to keep getting stuck in some shit. You're like, okay, what's next? You're always thinking about, ooh, what's next? Because you think what's next is progress. So you get stuck in time thinking about time being progress. So now you got to create the entire function, and you go through the entire process all over again. You just keep going through the same process. So you never really let go of anything. You never really let go of the strands. You acknowledged some shit to yourself. You felt good. But what if you sat there in that brilliance grand evening. You're always on time. What if I sat here in the nothingness? What would come up? What would come up? If I sat here in my nothingness, what would come up? Why would it come up? When would it come up? Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Because that's how you keep creating the same damn space. You keep creating the same space based on the experiences that you have not yet mastered. You ain't got to do shit. It'll happen the way it needs to happen. The key is to get to that point to embrace that happening. You are the happening. You are the happening. You are the cause. You are the effect. You are the vibration. You are the gender. You are the mind is all in the. You are the experience that the mind is all and everything is mental. You are the correspondence. You are all of the principles. But what stops you from experiencing all of it? What stops you from getting to that point? Everything that you put in play. Everything that you put in play based on this land of duality. The land of destruction. Everything down here is meant to be destroyed or destroy something. Think about it from you coming back down here with baby brain. It destroys your ability to use. It destroys your ability to use your godlike gifts. So if you really think about it to yourself, when you really think about it to yourself, and you say to yourself, I never want anybody to experience what I've been through. You don't know how deep that goes. You don't even know why you said it. You thought you said it at the point that you think that you said it at the point that you said it, but that space doesn't exist. You said it because it felt heartfelt, or it made you feel like a hero, or it made you feel courageous, or whatever you were trying to feel, or whatever feeling you were trying to define at that point in time. That's why you said what the fuck you said. But what if you stop saying things based on trying to maintain the feeling, to hear it, to see it, to taste it, the senses, and you just said it to say it? You said it, fuck the result. I'm saying this because it's of me. Think about how much shit, think about how many speeches that you said already based on creating that identity. Now, imagine that going back in reverse. That's you doing this healing work. That's the internal work. The weight and the sum of everything that you spoke through that traumatic experience, that negative point, that's the fear. So you got to go back through all of the fear. But think about it on the macrocosm, not the microcosm, because this shit's happening for you, not to you. See, you thinking it's to keep everything going the way that it is going. You cannot be a part. You are of the macro and you are of the micro. But I can never let you see yourself in the macro or in the micro. I must keep you between the macro and the micro. That means I must keep you in between your insecurities and the results of your insecurities at all times. I must keep you in a land of suspension. Hello, I'm your ego. Hello, I'm your identity. I must keep you in suspense. I must keep you in the suspended realm. You can never touch both. If you touch both sides, everything goes away. I can't allow you to do that. I must live. I'm your thought. I must live. I'm your anger. I'm your pain. I must live. I must live in the present so you never come to the present. I must live. That's why everything that comes into your present only exists based on from your unseen. But then every once in a while, because it happens, every once in a while, ding, 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 ding. Every once in a while, you get at somebody you get a vessel or an avatar, whatever you want to call it, that's going to come through and formulate around all of your thoughts. They're going to formulate around all of your thoughts. And based on your insecurities, your wounds, everything that you're going through, that you feel like you're going through in your life, they're going to surround around that space. I want you to imagine that. Imagine yourself doing that because that's what you do. Now imagine the pathways. Now imagine the roads, imagine the trees. Imagine the roads, imagine the trees. Imagine the paperwork, imagine the people. And that's where you at right now. Everything in that space is for you to experience it. You're saying your manifestations don't work. You're saying the intention doesn't work. You are the subject and the object. Yep. You're the subject and the object. The object moves only based on what you are subjected to. Yeah. So you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again to keep maintaining that subject, that identity. You were already it. It took a long time for me to realize that I was already it. In your internal work, you're coming back to that it, that point. You're coming back to that point. Everything else that you create is based on that, the imagination of that point, what that point sees. So if my point, me, in myself, has seen trauma after trauma, yeses and nos, then what am I trying to get back to? You watch The Matrix, and they said it in The Matrix, there is no spoon. They gave you a long out speech in Lord of the Rings, the trilogies, what the ring represents. Harry Potter, Star Wars, every epithet, every story leads back to you. No fault, no right, no wrong, no good, no bad, no man, no woman, you. Leads you right back to you. In the path that you must take to get back to you. You keep avoiding yourself. You keep avoiding this inner work. But all you're telling yourself is, I'm going to keep this shit present so I can keep avoiding me. Just think about that to yourself. That's what you keep telling yourself. In order to avoid myself, I must be busy. Everything from that one singular thought, you got to keep creating this entire space or this entire web in order that they're all connected to you feeling that same thought. So you keep, but I got to remember the feeling. I got to remember the feeling. I got to remember the feeling. That's what this is the life of you living inside of the trauma. This is you living in the trauma. This is you keep trying to, the void that comes up based on the emotional trauma, the trauma that you've been through, the events that you've been through. This is what you just keep doing. I got to remember the feeling. I don't want to feel it, but I want to think about it. That's what you tell yourself. That's what the trauma is. It's a memory. Just like you keep reprogramming all the other fucking memories. I'm going to keep the memory going. I ain't let go of it yet. Oh, it's still there. That way you can keep running away from it instead of facing it. Because all you're doing is running back around to it. You stuck in the circle, that comfort zone. As long as you can steady react to it, you okay. What happens when you can't react to that shit? Then you really got to start doing the work. Then you really got to face the big bad wolf. Now you got to face it. Ain't no co-signing. Ain't no co-signing. Ain't no amount of money. Ain't nothing gonna stop you from facing us. Ain't nothing gonna stop you from facing us. You can give us any name that you want. You can hide us behind any name, any deity that you want. But there's nothing stopping you from facing us. Until you face us, you will not go anywhere. But we're going to make it easy for you. We're going to hide behind everything so you can still get that feeling. Because we don't want you to forget the feeling. We want you to get to us. We want you to get to us. But we're going to hide behind everything you create. We don't let you play your game. We don't let you play your game. Keep playing. We don't let you play your game. We don't live inside of time. You do. We don't live inside of time. You do. And this is what it is when you're going through that battle with yourself. You're trying to see over here, and you can't imagine what it would take. It's not so much about what it would take, it's what you got to let go of to get there. Now you got to go back and look at all those conversations that you had, because you've already made some of the conversation. You've already done some of the shit. You've done everything that is necessary to get to that point. This is the reality of it. You've already done everything that has been needed for you to get to that point. 1 second. You've already done everything you needed to do. I'm going to sit you right there. You've already done everything you needed to do to get to the point to where you're trying to get to. You've already unlocked the tax bracket. You've already unlocked the tax bracket. You've already unlocked the money. You've already unlocked everything that you needed. You've already unlocked it. The issue is, are you willing to accept it? This is what the conditioning is. This is what the conditioning, this is what the emotional voids, this is what the trauma creates. You'll never be worth it because you don't know what it is. You have to define it first. You can't define me. You can spend your entire life trying to define me. That's what everybody does. Everybody from their own fractal point spends their entire life trying to define themselves outside of themselves. And the only thing that they can use is the image inside of their mind that led them to that point. I can't see myself as anything less than what I am now. Okay, cool. This is how I got there. That's how you got there, indeed. But if you thought about it, now think about every other time that you got somewhere and what you had to become to go to exist there. The only thing that stopped you from, the only thing that keeps you there are the memories or the emotional aspects anyway. So if I'm not emotionally present during my life in a space, then the only way I feel that I can be inside of that space or worth of that space is based on the relevance of the emotion. So now I got to go back and look at what emotions put me there. What emotions put me there? What thoughts put me there? What actions put me there? Oh shit, I got to take accountability. Run away again. What put me there? Because what puts you there is what sustains you being there. That's why when something's falling apart, the same shit that puts you in that space, the same shit that's going to fuck you up. So if I don't understand it, I'm always going to be stuck in it. I'm always going to go back to the original state. I'm always going to go back to my original state. The only reason I came out was to run away from the demon. That's the infatuation. That's the addiction. The basis of most of your relationships based in survival. That's you basing yourself in survival. As long as I'm based in survival, then everything must be the experiences of my survival. Some of y'all are still running around like you was, like I remember when I first came from under the thumb of my parents and I was actually able to travel and shit. I didn't realize that I was just repeating the first time that it worked. You ever thought about that shit? You just repeating the first time that it worked. That's all you're doing. The first time that it worked in that situation. And then you tell yourself, okay, cool, I got to burn this out. What if? Because you always go ask the question, what if I didn't do it this way? another layer, another experience, another perception. What if I was a hoe? That's what it looks like to be a hoe. Based on the emotional blueprint that I with inside of myself. That's how you keep creating all this bullshit in your life. You think shit is unfair, then shit'll be unfair. And then you live an escape that's based on shit not being fair. You want to be rigid and in control of shit, then you create an entire escape that's based on the rigidity and control. But they all overlap. They all overlap. So the answer, the way out is going to be the way out is always going to go through another point that of the overlap. The same way that you navigated yourself down that fucking rabbit hole of your life. The only reason certain shit hit you on the way down was because it was already a part of you. But you got to take that accountability. Remember, there's no such thing as fault. It's seeing things for what the fuck they are. All these definitions that you keep trying to put on shit to try to make it something so you can categorize it and keep yourself in the identity. If it's that, then I'm this. I'm still me. That's all you keep trying to fucking do. That's all you out here trying to do with your life. That's the emotional void. That's avoiding the void. But the void is behind, your void is behind everything that you get into. But you assimilate your void into that space simply so these are the experiences that I'm going to get to myself through. On one side, because it's in duality, on one side, I can maintain my identity, and on the other side, this identity gonna get shredded. Everything that I ever thought is gonna get shredded. And even though that I know that I have to learn some shit, I have an expectation, i.e. identity, sit here for the expectation, i.e. identity, sit here for the condition, i.e. ego, sit here for that space. You see how you keep doing it over and over and over again? You keep committing to the same pattern over and over and over again. The same fucking pattern. That's why whenever we go through the shadow work process, we have to discern and understand your pattern. Your pattern and your pattern is not as important as the emotions that are underlining under it. That's the false sense. That's why I was telling people about the false sense of interest. You got interest based on your pattern. But if your pattern went in there, would those be your interests? I've told that story before when I was talking about I've told this story before when I was talking about my affiliation with the New York Giants and not liking the Cowboys. But when I really started looking at why I didn't like the only reason that I like the Giants is because that's why I met my father. So every memory of my father, I symbolized around, that was the symbol used to contain that power. So the only way that I could feed from that power was maintaining this symbolism or this deity that I deified and put all of that energy behind. So I never have to become it. I can just say, that's my team. That's my team. That's my subway. I can take some ownership. Because until I become it, I'm always going to be fighting for ownership. Until I become an owner, I'm always going to be fighting for ownership until I take ownership in the love that I always wanted, the love that I never received. I will always perceive and create a space to go feel it or to go fight for it based on the definition that I set in myself, that I never had it. I watched my mother fight for my father's attention. It wasn't love. So the emotional dynamics of that aspect and that duality. I watched my pops in his control aspects when it came to the aspects of love and using that to I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that and not that. I'm going to use that and not. So you're sitting in this space with yourself and you're like, I'm going to use that and not that. What if you don't use any of it? What if you let the game just play? What would come up? That's letting go of the control. That's allowing the death to happen. Getting past the point of reaction. Getting past the point of where I can respond. I can pull up the one-liner. I can pull up this and keep using this same line. Okay. That don't mean it worked. That means you made it present. That's all this shit wants here is all it wants you to be is present. And you battle between yourself trying to be relevant. You're trying to stay relevant when all you have to do is be present. 90% of your arguments is based on you not being present. You do not know what being present in yourself is. Therefore, you're always asking for presence. You always asking for gifts. I don't ask for anything. Yeah, you do. That's why you in that space. You keep doing what you're doing. Because you ain't ready to be honest with yourself to that level. I tell you, this honesty is different. This openness is different. This vulnerability is different. That's why you use that That's why you use that catalyst in between it. That's why you'll sit there and take them shrooms, same way you took them pills, same way you took that drink, same way you smoke, because it puts you in that space. So now you feel you have control over it because you have this one singular item. But who's controlling who? Remember, that's you and you're you. Remember, this is you and you're you. Who has more control? Control is in the authority. The authority is in the definition. Goes all the way back to the emotion. Goes all the way back to the emotional point. That's why I told you everything down here is based on emotions. And the trauma stops you from feeling the emotion. Emotional relevance is just simply you being able to distort the emotion. Emotional presence is totally different. That's why you fight for sex so much. That's why you fight for money. Once again, your hope. I'll put this behind that. That's why you'll end almost every conversation that you have with yourself, whether you say it out loud or to yourself. I'm going to make this $1 million or I'm going to die. If I don't make that $1 million, I'm going to die. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to die. But you're the programmer. You know you lying to yourself. You aren't present for the death to happen. But you had to put something there. Pride. Whatever you defined as your pride. That's what you put in place. So now, I prolonged my life. I can live to fight another day. I can live to survive another fucking day. I can live to survive another fucking day. Who's surviving? The identity. Remember, you're still in that room I told you about earlier. You still sitting in that room waiting for somebody to unlock the door. You don't care if you go up or down, as long as somebody unlocks the door. See, the accountability for you, the accountability is when that door is opened, what direction will I go? Every relationship, every job, every time that you open your eyes into this space, you have a decision to make. You have a decision to make. And based on that decision, rolls out everything that you must deal with. Instead of looking at it as, oh my God, I got to do, that's the shit you got to deal with to get to that point. What does that mean? What emotion is tied to that? Because I'll give you the example. We've done this shit multiple times to get to that feeling. You've done that shit multiple times to get to that feeling. But you didn't understand the emotional underline of it. You'll pay off a debt. You'll go to school. You'll stay at that job. You'll stay in that space to give a physical precedent to the feeling that you're trying to triumph. And in either side of this, you're trying to go that way or you're trying to go that way. What if you just stood in the middle? This is you doing the shadow work. This is you doing the work. What if I sit in the middle? What if I allow the thought to come up and I feel through the thought and I learn this thought and now create my boundary based on that thought of me being in this space? Then everything that I would look at now becomes an opportunity. It's not an obstacle anymore. It's an opportunity because I've embraced becoming death. And the more and more that I start embracing that shit, the more and more I started loving that shit. That's what you're doing with yourself inside of this process. Because every time you go back to it, every time you don't do it and you try to bounce back out of something, it's like being in that relationship with yourself. Every time you don't like the relationship with yourself and what's coming from it, what do you go do? You go find another reason or another way to escape it. That's what you've been doing with the external narrative, but those relationships are only the relationship with yourself. So imagine doing that over and over and over and over again in the number 8, the infinite pattern of time. And that's what you've been doing your entire time. You've been sitting here this entire time doing that over and over and over again. And it only gets created from the unseen aspects that you ain't dealt with yet. So if I keep using the same here's the box, here's the pillow, I want to use a box in real life because the box is going to give it a better, or a bag. Here's the bag. We've seen this similar bag in Santa Claus. Go back and watch, I'm getting that reading download. Go watch the Ernest Save Christmas special. Remember when he had Santa's bag and then he went into the bag and he went into the bag like this and everything, like whatever the thought was of somebody what they wanted, he pulled it out of the bag and it was like that orb, but it was like the bunny and all that shit. That's what you keep doing with your fucking life. You keep reaching into this bag, but not realizing that this bag is your thoughts. This bag only has the capacity for what's in your thoughts. So I can't see anything past my thoughts. But if my thoughts are fragmented in the shadows of myself, then how the fuck can I? I'm always going to be triggered, always going to be upset, always going to be mad, always going to be looking at it. I don't have enough time. My truth starts coming to the surface. But I don't want to see my truth. I'm going to keep putting my truth. That's all you've been doing this entire fucking time. So now look at the wounds of your mother. Look at your mother wound, the maternal wounds, and you see why you connected to your mother. You see why you connected to these people. You start seeing it. The truth is, the hardest aspect of you doing this work is you got to see yourself. You got to take accountability for that image of yourself. Not the identity that you put into that space. Not the reaction that you put into that space. But when you start seeing that point, it changes how you interact in that space. Because now you got to be emotionally present. See, you know how to be mad at your mother. But as quick as you know how to be mad for your mother, you know how to go to the highest, remember the vibration point. Everything that you call love for your mother is actually pity. I want you to think about this. Everything that you feel for your mother is pity. Because you want your mother to feel the same pity and feel that same pity for you. But you disguised it as love. But remember, everything down here is destruction. Everything down here is the void based on your survival. This is your survival and your learning process. So what you're truly trying to feel down here is pity. Now you got to think about the relationships. Think about the job. Think about how you go get your job. You go to your job based on fucking pity. You don't go to your job because here's the thing. When you start feeling that certain way about your job, not letting you do something, you still go back to it. Why? Pity, guilt, insecurity, jealousy, the physical emotions. You can't never find peace staying where the fuck you at. You'll never find love where the fuck you at. That's why you keep trying to move around. That's why you get in that relationship and old buddy says, fly across the country for me. And you do it. And then you created that time scar. You created that time scar. So now you want to keep living that time scar. It's like, think about this is what I always say, think about the traumatic experiences of your life. So think about what you were, what happened in your life. And you're going to start to realize that you're still doing that. You're still doing it. You're still in that room. The hardest thing to accept is that you're still sitting in that room. You still in that same space. You still alone. You still sitting there in that space. But until you take ownership of being in that room, you can't do shit to the room. There's a reason that you were in that room. There's a reason that you're in the space. There's a reason that you're on your square. You start to remember all of that shit. You're on your square. You're in your space. If everything that I do is based on, if everything vibrates or the frequencies or the energy, because we get stuck in that love and light bullshit, I'm going to keep attracting based on you ain't defined the manifestation yet. That's why the shit keep coming. You ain't defined the manifestation yet. You ain't willing to. You still looking at it from a preserving standpoint. Manifestation, intention setting, your spell is not done in the fucking light. So when you get stuck on, I'm going to do it in the moon, and I'm going to do it with this, or I'm going to do it with that, you still stuck somewhere. You still trying to belong. You're afraid to become the vessel because you feel that your vessel, what is your vessel full of? Now you're going to look at yourself and be like, because this is what it involves in this is what it means to involve in the shedding of all of these aspects. You are the vessel, and everything you bring through this vessel is based on the experiences to your life, what you need to learn and what you need to master. That's why I say every message, every lecture, every class, and the reason I want you to think about it like this. I'm able to produce a lecture every Friday on schedule. On schedule. But in order for me to go to that process, to build that certain space, I had to go through a process. And I could have hit that process and then it would have been in my light, but I had to go through that process in the present. I had to be present for that process to take purpose. So now you'll look at everybody that's around you when you're listening to people. They always tell you something that keeps you in an emotional lock with them. Always. So they can keep feeding. What if somebody doesn't give you bait? What if somebody, the conversation, think about the conversation that you had with a motherfucker that gave you some direct shit. It made you feel some type of way. How do you respond? That was your way out. That was your way out. That was your death. That was your death. But you're afraid to die. But you're afraid to die. I gave you your way out. I gave you your way out. That's your way out. What stops you from taking it? Everybody that comes into your life, they give you your way out. Period. Everybody in your life gives you your way out. Everybody that comes in your life gives you your way in. But see that way in and way out, it's a one-way tunnel. It's a one-way to get here. One way. It's designed that way. What designs that tunnel? Everything that you've been experiencing. I'm a Gemini North Node. So I knew my lessons would be in this aspect. So my South Node is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is conformity, is in aspects of conforming, constriction, staying tied, not challenging. Gemini is about splitting to understand the other half of itself. That's what the Gemini does, is understanding the other half of itself. So as a Gemini in my North Node, and then Scorpio being my, or the Scorpion being my rising, I knew that my lessons would be in feeling the lessons of my persons. Everything that I did designed me to go to that point. Everything. Everything from me absorbing my brother in the womb to why I lived 2 lives for most of my damn life was based in response to, I was doing what I needed to do to survive. Most of the shit that you doing right now in your life is to survive. The moment that you let go of surviving, and all of the anxiety and the overwhelm and everything that's being thrown at your ass, that shit's been being thrown at your ass. But now you can see it. Now you can make the plan instead of reacting to the pattern. Because as long as you hold on to the survival mode is a pattern of your creation. Layer over that insecurity, stress, worry, doubt, create an identity to maintain each. Create an identity or a point that goes through all of those points and weaves them all together for me to exist. I'm trying to give you the keys to your power. You created that entire weaving of fabric and put it on. And you just kept repeating this process and keep putting them on. The emotions grew in that space. Your energy stifled inside of that space. And they all had the same answer. They've all had the same fucking answer. But based on that weave or that layer, they all had a distinct voice to set the tone for that layer. You're breaking through those layers. You're breaking through those layers. Every one of your dreams is going to tell you the same shit. Whether you keep having dreams about birth or you keep having dreams about death. If you have dreams about death, that means you are in the point of a transition. What around that death that you need to do into the transition? If you keep having dreams about birth or the beginning or babies, what do you keep birthing? What are you scared of? All of it's going to lead you back to you. If you keep having the thought, you got to go deeper. Stop using the same blanketed reaction. You're used to reacting. I'm used to reacting. If I really want what I said that I want, what's stopping me from getting it? Maybe that's not what I really want. If I can keep defining it, what does it really mean? Remember, I told you it's not about avoidance. So you're on the mark, but you got to take that shit deeper. See, you can accept it as what it is for face value, or you can go deeper because you're going to do it anyway. You're going to do this shit anyway. You've already been doing this shit. You're going to do it anyway. Regardless, you're going to do it anyway. The relationship that you were in, the relationship that you were in, the job that you had, whatever it may be. The same way that you living through the age where you develop the emotions for that trauma, for that event to happen, is the same way you gonna deal with that event. The same avoidance, the same I'm finding myself bullshit. You gonna keep giving it the same damn definitions and come back to the same fucking point. And come back to the same fucking bullshit. Just so you can react the same exact way. Because you ain't really learned shit. Because you kept looking for something. Stop looking. Seeking you shall find. Stop looking. You stop looking and everything will come to you so crystal clear and in clarity. Everything that you need to hear. But you got to remove that bullshit definition you keep telling yourself. You still blaming your dad for some shit. You still blaming somebody else for some shit that happened to you. So now every time you come to a point in this cycle of yourself, you go until you find that point. Seek and you shall find. What do you think? The unseen is absolute. The nothingness is absolute. So what do you think you keep pulling the shit from? The shit don't come from nowhere. That nigga not being shit don't come from nowhere. But your own thoughts. Them bitches not being shit don't come from nowhere. Comes from your own fucking thoughts. Everybody else is just a byproduct of you connected to that. Everything else is an emotional point connecting to that to make that real. So you think your mom ain't shit. Your sister think your mom ain't shit. Your dad think your mom ain't shit. All these people think your mama ain't shit. That's the negative. Now you got a whole stream of people on this side thinking that your mother was this and this, this and this, and your daddy was this, 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 and this because of the church and all that shit. That created that space. Now you got this image that is of your mother. Remember how I talked about your identity and your ego keeps you separated from the birth. So you never can go back to the birth. And it keeps you separated from the death. So you never can experience the death. You sit in between battling your birth and the death. So everything that you do in your life, you think it is about, I got to do all of this before I die. Why? So I got to keep birthing all this bullshit in my space, filling these emotional voids to keep this stream going. 1 second. But what if you let go of those aspects? What if you let go of that thought? Do you really want to see yourself as that person, as that energy? See, most of the time when we stay stuck within these traumatic events with ourselves, it's to keep ourselves distant from that memory. So we keep creating these points in our life to keep us distant from that memory. But as long as that memory is still present, it still must be fed. As long as that original imprint is there, it must still be fed. You still got to feed it. Still got to pay it. It got an interest rate. It got an APR based on your potential aura and output. So you only going to be able to do what it tells you to do. You living in that type of space. And until you take ownership of that mindset, this is the LLC mentality. Until you're willing to do the internal work to take the ownership and remove the excuses, you still going to think about it as a fucking fight. You still going to see the conflict and you going to magnify it. But I can tell you this shit's beautiful. I remember going back into the shadows. I remember my pops. I remember I did something that my pops always did. He was like, everything that I do, my pops taught me this shit. Pops is alive because he's transitioning. So I've been talking to my pops a lot through the spirit realm. So a lot of the lessons are now making more and more sense. Remember, the work's never done. I'm sitting there with my pops one night in the transition. He was like, everything you do for somebody is always going to be present. The thing that stops people or affects people is their unwillingness. He's telling me this right now. Is their unwillingness to accept the condition that they put on their own self. I remember a long time ago, my pops was like, no matter what, you have the ability, and this was told to me in some of the most weirdest ass fucking places. That's why I never could place it. You have the ability to see the truth within people. You have the ability to see the truth within people. You have to see the best. You can see whatever it is you need. It's always the truth within a person. The thing that will stop you from using that ability and not using the ability, but understanding the ability, embracing the ability to its full capacity are the conditions that you set on your heart. One of the biggest things that my pops told me, my father told me that was in transition, was you gonna come to a point where you gonna make decisions not as the man, not as Carlos, not as, but as the authority. I didn't know what that authority was for a point in time. The authority has no bias. Your authority has no bias. It does not live in perception. It does not live in preserving. It does not live in the projection. It does not live within the identity. Your authority lives within your perspective, lives within your ultimate potential, and lives within your ultimate purpose of yourself. So now when you look at your space and who you are inside of your space, that is the results of your own authority. It's not the everything, but we get stuck because we're thinking that we're reacting to the world and the world's not reacting to us. We get stuck. And this is what basically what we're doing is, instead of allowing the flow to go out, as in love is destructive, it goes out, we're allowing the fear or it to reverse and it comes in. So we're seeing our space as we're going in, but we're trying to push everything out. You're in the natural motion of allowing everything to push out. You want to push everything away. That's why when the emotion comes up, you want to push everything away. You want to say, fuck everybody. You want to say, fuck this nigga, fuck that bitch, fuck them. You want to push everything away. Similar to your inner child sitting in a room, pushing everything away, but keeping themselves surrounded with things that bring them security. Your inner child still sitting in that space under that security. Like this. I remember my first visualization, I visualized my inner child was sitting there like this. And my inner child was an asshole. Nigga, about fucking time you came in here, nigga, I'm hungry. First thing the motherfucker said to me. First thing my inner child said to me. Nigga, I've been waiting, nigga, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. And I'm sitting there like, nigga, I'll smack the shit out of you. But it was part of my process. Nigga, I will smack the shit out of you. Because I'm talking to myself. I'm getting myself in order. I'm no longer allowing what's outside of me, you feel me, in that space. Remember, you're going from the childlike mind to the innocence of the heart, the path of the heart. The path of the heart is very destructive. The path of the heart, in order to open up this pathway, everything of your physical existence must be challenged. Everything of your physical existence must be challenged. This is when we always say, everybody can't go. You're going to come to a point where you're going to be like, everybody can't go. That's why you get tired, because all of the emotional manifestations of that is that pity. That is not love, it is pity. Because it's based in your survival. Therefore, you only can create based on what you see. So anything that challenges what I see does what? It's your trauma. It's the traumatic events that you have not dealt with that keep creating your life. You're afraid to let that shit die. Because you think death is too good for it. You know what death is. You know the true essence of death means transition. Deep down, you know exactly what the fuck it means. It's absolute. It means to transition. It means to let go. You use the definitions and you put a personality behind the definitions. That's why you feel some type of way and go through the motherfucking pieces of when motherfucker dies. You don't know how to fucking feel. Oh my God, they left too early. You're telling yourself you leaving too early. You have to be able to see yourself in everything. All things. You got to go past that point of reaction in order to see yourself there. That's why sometimes you'll agree and other times you don't. Because you're still living in bias. So this shit ain't about right or wrong. This entire lecture I've been telling you, this shit ain't about right or wrong. This shit ain't about good or bad. This is about understanding how people are going to accept it on their level where they're at. This ain't about me meeting you where the fuck you at, because there's nowhere to meet you. You're already here. What are you doing while we inside of this space? You're already here. You're already everywhere you need to be. Just sit there with it for a little bit. Just sit there. You'll get it. You'll get it. You're already sitting there. You're already in the position where you need to be at. For some, you got a physical representation in front of you of what you need to face. You keep creating it in your space. But then you create, in duality, you create something to take you away from that space. That's all you keep doing based on your trauma. Because remember, your traumatic experiences are the birth. Your traumatic experiences are the birth. The emotional voids, the addictions, prolong your death. You want to die, but you're scared to. You're thinking about everything you're about to leave behind. So you got to create a reason for you to be there. But the reason that you created to be there is the same reason that they exist. You didn't make anything different. You got to follow the same, because you only can create from the unseen. Because in your mind, think about it like this. In your head, you can be like, my dad's already dead to me. That is your definition of death. You have now defined what death is to you. My father is dead to me. My mother is dead to me. Sister, brother, whoever, they're dead to me. You have now defined your gateway to death. You have now defined that void to yourself. That's what it is to hold on to the traumatic experience. That's how you define your death. As long as I don't reach that point, I'm good. Congratulations. Your identity now will create every scenario to keep you away from that point. The identity, the ego that you try to maintain, the humanity now shall create every possible. Remember, there's infinite probabilities within infinite possibilities to make you feel that point. But your true self, sitting in that space by itself, untouched, your soul's untouched. Nigga, I don't want that. Remember, this is the disciplining of your inner child. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't want that. Get that shit out of here. That's what you keep doing with your shit. The moment that something come up that's forcing you to actually sit down with yourself, I don't like that. So imagine, once again, now we've been going through this whole lecture. Imagine doing that shit over and over in an infinite cycle. That's how you created your damn space. That's how you created everything. That's how you created your space. And every layer is coded to a certain code that you keep getting stuck in, that maintains your pattern. Maintains your pattern. How you feed it. What I learned that I let go. And every day is a process to it until you master it. Once you master it, it's a whole nother set of lessons. This shit ain't about fucking levels. Ain't no damn levels. You told yourself there was levels so you could stay safe. I talked about this in the podcast. You told yourself that there was levels and there was differences and it was in the experience of yourself. You said there was differences. You said there was levels. You said there was experiences. You said it was this. You said it was that. You said it was this. You said it was that. And you just keep saying this shit over and over and over again in an autonomous rhythm to maintain the identity. You got to keep saying that shit to maintain the identity. This is why I said earlier on, if I say that I care, then I really don't. I'm trying to convince, I'm echoing into the space that I care. I need everything in my space to make it like I fucking care. Same thing if I say I don't fucking care. I got to keep saying shit in the space to initiate how the fuck I care. Or I don't care. Or am I here if I'm not there? I got to keep acknowledging things into that space to make myself relevant within the space instead of feeling the fucking emotion. Because that same level of avoidance in that space is the same level of avoidance I'm doing somewhere else. But I can stand so strongly behind it in this space because of time. Because of some bullshit I keep telling myself. These are the layers going through your fucking shadow. All that bullshit that you told yourself up to this point. All that shit you lied to yourself. You lied to yourself. That's why it's so, why do you think it's so easy for you to call out a liar or to give somebody the title that they lied? Because you lied to yourself. It isn't about what, because think about it. I no longer feel the need to call anybody a liar. I no longer feel the need to call anybody a liar. There's like, in the same sense, I don't feel the need to tell anybody that they're telling the truth. They're the same thing. The truth is based on the permissible perception of their thought process, just like their lie. So the lie doesn't exist. All there is the truth. Instead of me battling back and forth, this is a lie, that is the truth. This is the lie, this is the truth. You were taught that. You gave yourself that program to keep yourself distracted. That's a lie, that's the truth. That's the lie, that's the truth. So now you looking at everything based on lies and truth, one side or the other. Instead of you sitting there looking like, nigga, it's all the truth. That's just somebody's perception. I'm avoiding my perception of myself. I'm avoiding changing my perspective. Because perception is in the light. That's somebody's perception. I don't have to deal with that. Let me change my perspective. It's not your job to sit there and define the perception. It's light. You have to define your perspective. Because most of the things that I looked at that were grotesque and horrible, or whatever definition I gave it, when I really looked, I was like, nigga, that really ain't that bad. I could laugh at it. When I really started, I was like, oh shit. I don't own shit. Because when I let go of owning everything, I let go of the emotional voids. When I let go of trying to own shit, or the definition based on guilt, pity, insecurity, my jealousy, my lower emotions, or these lower vibrations, when I let go of these aspects, then I could actually start doing the work. But you got to get to a point when you're ready to do the work. Your work is going to be behind that definition that you've given yourself. When I speak, I'm speaking from inside of that space. I'm outside of that space. My avatar is within it, sitting in the space. But I'm outside of it. So I'm projecting from the inside out. See how you change your perception? You change the projection? See, You being stuck in that void, you stuck on the outside trying to look at yourself like they got him trapped. Who the hell is they? Ain't nobody. Who the hell is they? Who is they that got you stuck where you at? You've always been given the way out, but you don't want to use it because to use it, that means I got to take some accountability for myself. I got to take responsibility for myself. I got to start. And I've given myself such a long list of things that I have to do in this aspect of, I've created all of these emotional points or timelines that I gotta stay on. So I just keep creating my space based on that. So I stay restricted. So now when I want to escape, I gotta find the addiction, or I gotta find something that coincides with this emotion. But the longer that I'm on that wave of that skate, guess what I got to keep doing? I got to have everything on that skate match that. Earlier on in this lecture, when I told you, like, if you got a homegirl or a homeboy that is very loose with their self, loose with themselves, don't give a fuck. They're you. They're you. I can never imagine myself just laying up, and I can never imagine myself just laying up and letting bitches do some shit to me and then not even paying me or whatever the fuck you saying to yourself. It ain't about the money. It ain't about the definition that you gonna put on it. Because all you doing is trying to find yourself into that space. You're always gonna start at the middle. I don't care where you go, you're always gonna start in the middle. Think about the stories that you tell. You always tell them from the middle. You don't tell them from the beginning. Because you scared of the beginning. Think about the stories that you listen to with people. They always give you the middle. They always give you the middle. Or when they flare up, they give you the ending. It's over this time. They gave you the ending. Man, we've been together for so long. They give you the middle. But they never give you the beginning. Because the beginning is not in the relationship. The beginning is the relationship with themselves. The beginning is the relationship with you. Your ending, they're giving you the beginning. That's why you gotta give them some time. Whether you say you should give them some more time, or on the other end, you like, yeah, fuck with that nigga. Either way, you're giving them an ending that best suits you. And you gotta be honest with that shit. I had to be honest with that. I had to get so honest with myself and removing that layer and really seeing myself in that space of why I would do that, because it gave me that emotional relevance. Because I remember, like, I had friends, family members, lose job, whatever it was. I could be there as the identity I was trying to maintain. That's why at the end of it, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, no matter how many months, now I'm sitting there and I'm complaining because the complaint is the true me. The ugly side of me is the true me. So I put all of this distance in between that to avoid seeing the true me. Because I could have started that point with, hey, I understand you're going through some shit. I feel you what you're going through some shit. But you can't stay with me. What stops you from saying that? You can't stay with me. If you are in this space, my standard must show. You see, the conditions, the expectations that you put into the space are to avoid you from disciplining yourself within the standards of creating the plan to get the discipline to gravitate the things that you need to come towards you. You got to take accountability when it comes to this manifestation with your energy and your power. You just can't be like, I'm going to sit down for 7 days and do this, this, and this, and then I'm going to get $1 million. And they keep doing the same bullshit. This is not what this is. You still thinking from the religious standpoint. 1 second. This is why in that same instance with yourself, you can say fuck religion. You'll hear motherfuckers say fuck religion, death to religion, and it's not this. But when you're looking at the point, you got to understand the motherfucker's still saying it's not this and it's not that, or it's not this and it's not. You still stuck in the duality. Uh-huh. You are stuck in the duality of your own life. You created everything that you create in the land of destruction has two parts. It has two parts. Everything that you create down here is going to have two parts. The positive and its negative. It's not good nor bad. It's positive or negative. So the same reason that you create something is based on what you're focused on when you create it. So if I'm focused on through a biased standpoint, that means the traumatic experience. That means the only reason I want to do this is to prove my dad wrong. As an example, I want to prove my pops wrong. That means everything that I do will now split, because you split it and split it again. That thought now is split again, and then it's split and it's split, and you keep splitting it so you can keep living out through that space. That's what you're chasing. And it will naturally repel itself because the negative repels. But if I change my thought process from that bias, yeah, focus and prayer, the same thing. You sitting there, just like the aspect of you saying you stuck in prayer, like, I prayed 1,000,000 times for just the chance. Your prayer starts to change based on the frequency of what you don't understand, what you got to do to work with. Your frequency changes. The focus and the frequency point changes based on every time you open your eyes or you look into the light and you're seeing what you're trying to preserve. I'm not trying to preserve anything if I'm saying I'm trying to make $1 million. I got to devoid myself of anything that is based on the old preservation of my old self. Because if I had the $1 million, if I had the gift back here, then all I would be telling myself again in a whole nother space of time, none of this shit would have existed. I'm still stuck within that train of thought. I have to remove, but I got to understand those points. Those points were there for a reason. This shit is not happening to you, it's happening for you. What you gonna do with it? This shit's happening for you. It's forcing you to plan. It's forcing you to sit down and be honest with yourself. It's forcing you to have that conversation you need to be having with yourself. You keep talking about, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, but you don't know what none of that shit mean to you. I must do it to myself first. If I'm not willing to kill myself, if I'm not willing to embrace the experience that is beautiful as death, the transition, then everything outside of me, when it happens, I'm going to keep reacting to it because I fear to do it to myself. That's how you keep getting lost in the That's how you keep getting lost in the translations and lost in the loops with everything that's going on in your life. Because you devoid to see yourself. How can that be there? You ain't seen to that point yet. It's there, but you got to accept to go to that point. How did they get to that point? Uh-huh. Yeah, you got either you in it or you not. Either you in this shit or you're not. That's the difference between when you think about the aspects of the binding keeps you stuck within that. Even when you think about, okay, let's go even deeper. When you think about the left-handed path, the true left-handed path knows it can pull from the right hand. See, the right-handed path does not want to, that's why they say the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. The left hand knows everything and accepts everything that the right hand does. The right hand cannot accept what the left hand does. That's the left hand and the right-handed path. That's everything you read about Allah when they talk about the left hand and the right hand. It was talking about your ass. The left hand or your creation or your logic and reason they don't coincide until you make them. That's why you must go to the left hand or to the darkness. This is you removing your right hand needs identities to play with. It needs to create identities. It needs to create the identity. It has to create the safe word. It got to keep creating bullshit. But your left hand, it knows everything is what it is, and I'm going to use it for what the fuck it is. If I'm going to be in this position, it is teaching me something. That's why I tell you to raise your right hand. That's why in court they tell you to raise your right hand, not your left hand. Put your left hand on the book. Because the left hand is into the nothingness or the absolute. The left hand is the transmuter of what is absolute. That's why when you look at most of them when you look at most of the spells, they always tell you from the left-handed space, the left hand or the dominance versus the right hand is the receiver. But when I've told you before, like whichever hand you are is your dominant hand, you probably came down here to create, or you probably came down to logic and reason. That's how you're getting stuck on. You're getting stuck on the transfer. Whatever you came down here as, you're here to learn the opposite. So you came down here, that's why your traumatic experience happened the way that it happened. See, this is all about acceptance down here. You got to accept it all. Not based on bias. Not because you said your dad was sick and you got to go past that point. And it hurts. I promise you it hurts. You remember, I want you to think about this. I've told this story before about my uncle being a pedophile, being a pedophile. This dark family truth. I had to get to the point, past reaction, and I had to be like, that nigga's name is Thomas. Thomas got some shit going on. Thomas has his own emotional catalog that he has went through and he has created his experiences. His are connected to me. This is when you go into the void. His are connected to mine in this current state because it shows how I have conversations with my inner child. Most of the times, your motherfuckers mad at pedophiles and shit. Love is love. Can't be loving little kids. Think about how you treat your inner child. Think about how you treat your inner child. You pull your inner child out for appearances and attention. You pull out your wounds for fucking attention. Then put it back in the room and use it. Now you mad at something outside it. They got to get all the motherfuckers that's misusing and taking the children's innocence and attacking the babies. You use your child all the fucking time. And if you have children through your traumatic experiences, this is the truth that you have to really get with yourself. This is the honesty with yourself. It's not this light version of yourself. This is the work. This is you dealing with yourself. So then I give you the question, do you want somebody that's going to blanket your shit? That's how you keep that's how you keep falling under the savior complexes of bullshit. Because you keep looking at them and you keep hiding, and then you keep noticing that when they get brought to the, if one thing has been taught to me about every fucking lesson in understanding deities and how the deities work or the principles of self, there's always the light or what is preserved in the light, and it is what is within the darkness. The darkness is what creates the light. From my darkness creates the light. It don't come from nowhere and it doesn't go nowhere. So if in my darkness I have filters, or in this case would be the trauma, the experiences, then that's how I would now perceive my light. That's how I preserve my light over and over and over again. Remember, this shit ain't about the good and bad no more. What is good? What is bad? What is your definition of good? Your definition of good and my definition of good, two different things. Your definition of bad and my definition of bad is two different things. My definition takes the damn word out of the fucking, the word don't even exist no more. That's how deep I went to myself. That's how deep you gonna go. To where that you got good sitting over there, use a little visualization. You got good sitting, you got the word good or whatever you symbolized as good sitting at the peak of the cave. Way down there in the jungle, deep, 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 deep down in the cave. Down deep in this cave. Is everything that's going to make you start to distort what good is. The deeper that you get inside of yourself, the more distorted that becomes. So now you got to look at all the good images. Remember I talked about that, the image of you got everybody said your mom was a good person, and you got everybody said your mom wasn't shit. Created the image. You sit at the top of this image. You can't go nowhere because you stuck in pity. You stuck in the guilt. You ain't felt love a day in your damn life. Whatever you felt was as in love was the energy, or from the aspect of it, in order to, because whatever you feel, you must become. Whatever you feel, you must become. That's part of your contract. What you feel, you must become. But if I've not become yet of myself, then of course I can't become whatever comes into my space. Are you willing to go that far? That's the lesson that you win in every space that you go into. That's the experience. Are you willing to become that? I can sit and go back to every relationship, every job that I was in, and I can say I was willing to become what it was, because that's what I was seen as anyway. The job, the relationship. You keep seeing yourself as trying to save them from their fucking problems. They see you as the problem. Can you see yourself as the fucking problem? No. Can you not? Can you see yourself as your problem? No. Scared? Keep going deeper. That means you got some work to do. Until you see yourself to that point and then come back up from that and rise from that, you ain't done your work. That's the cycle. We can highlight and be like, acknowledge, accept, but until you went through the, that's what you talk about in the psychological term. They're talking about shadow work. You got to sit with it. You got to sit with the feeling. You got to sit with it. You got to, that's what it is. You sitting with it. Allowing whatever comes up to pass. That means when you start feeling warm or you thought you was horny all the fucking time. I talked about that shit last week. You weren't horny. You just needed, you got triggered to execute. Is that wounds for sale? You got triggered to execute. That's all you were doing. You got triggered to execute. I have to execute something. I'm feeling this, therefore I must react, therefore I must create. Your base instinct in survival. I see something, it's happened, I must create. This energy has came into my space. I must create something with it to keep it here. Lower of your aspect. Because when you start really doing your internal work, you don't feel weighted down. Your trauma owns you. You keep trying to sell it. Your trauma owns you. You got to deal with that shit. This is what they talk about when they're talking about it takes a level of accountability. And you ain't heard nobody go past that point. Congratulations. Papa Lucifer goes past that point. I watched the video today, and I forgot the dude's name. It was on my TikTok. He was like, you must be willing in your field or wherever you are at, you must be willing to go further than anybody else is willing to go into that space. You must go past the point of discomfort. You must make it uncomfortable. I looked at that video, was like, yep, been doing that for a while now. Because I can't find nothing in comfort. Everything in comfort's already defined. Everything inside your comfort zone is already defined. You already got a place for it. And if you don't have a place for it, guess what you're going to do? You're going to try to create a place for it. That's the feeling of the emotional void. Everything in your space is there for a reason. And if something new comes into your space based upon the traumatic experience of trauma bonding, you're going to give it a reason to be in your space. You'll make every chick you get with a mother. But you never go back to the first existence. Look at the scape of your entire family. Look at the scape of your entire fucking family. Your mom ain't married. Your aunt ain't married. Your dad ain't never married. When they did get married, they weren't never married. It was a wedding. They had a wedding. They had a ceremony. We talked about that earlier on. You have to watch the playback when I talked about the breakdown of a wedding versus a marriage. The mother got married. Your mom never been married. They went to weddings. Cause the marriage is two becoming one. The marriage is two becoming one. So if I got fractures, how the fuck am I one? If I got trauma, how the fuck am I one? So the most I can do is wed. I can't reach the next level. It makes you change everything that you're doing and why you keep doing it and give it the truest definition of what the fuck it is. That's your internal work. That's the death. See, we always want to talk about the layers of death and everybody, you got to die and transition, but you got to simplify it. We'll say simplified as in talking to a child. You're not simplified as in talking to a child because a child don't see shit, they feel it. It's vibration of the frequency. So my essence is the frequency in which I connect to it. The frequency is how I connect to it, how I attract it. Everything else that comes around it is based on me being attracted to that, whatever it is. That's why you can get attracted to the nigga or the chick that's in shape and working out and they doing all these different things, but the emotional underline is the same until you define it. It's defined, it's the same. So you can easily go grab you a chick that's in shape, but the reason that she's in shape and the reason that you're attracted to her is the same emotional underline. She's insecure. You're insecure. You're going to come together and be really insecure. That's why when you come into the space with a motherfucker that's doing their work, you need that example. Now you sitting there like, I have nothing to give them. I've defined my entire life based on giving people things. That's how I live my life. That's how I've lived my entire life. I always had something to give. You still do, but you got to understand how you did it. It's all in the key how you did it. You did it the entire time. Remember, you did it from the you did it as a fracture. You did it as a fracture. You were fractured when you did it. So one side, it kept the physical in check, and the other side kept the emotions in check. In between that middle point was the unbiased or the spirit that kept that shit glued together. It was the spirit. That one piece in there that you weren't paying attention to. Your energy. You want to talk about your energy and shit. Do you really know what the fuck your energy is? I can feel when something's in my space because I know my energy. Go watch Hunter x Hunter. Go watch Hunter x Hunter. They always put it in your they always put it in your face. No, nigga, it's something that you want to look to understand yourself. Go watch Hunter x Hunter. It talks about using your nin and being able to. I remember I didn't understand what the fuck that was with my energy and why I didn't understand because there were so many filters to teach me how to use my energy and reaction to learn how to respond. So that shit became autopilot. You're afraid you gotta disengage and do the work before you can turn on autopilot. That's basically what you're doing. That you trying to move in autopilot and then getting mad at the course that's been set. You have to understand your course before you can use the autopilot. You got to understand your course. You got to plan the course before you even set the autopilot. You already have a course set. You already have patterns set. You already got behavior set. And you get mad at the results. They're result based on your pattern that you already set. Who set the pattern? The motherfucker sitting in that room. The 12-year-old you sitting in that room right now. And you've seen it in reflection. The 8-year-old you that sits in that room and they sitting there every time. They get excited. Ooh, somebody noticed this. Somebody noticed us. How they notice you? How they notice you? Because you brought up the traumatic experience. You brought up an experience. You didn't bring up the experience. You brought up a experience. My man ain't shit. Inner child runs to the door. Somebody said dad wasn't shit. Nah, that ain't what we talking about. Go sit your ass back down. Somebody said mom wasn't. Oh, they're not talking to me. Nobody wants to talk to me. That's why you keep trying to make that feeling last. That infatuation. Time to let it go. Time to embrace that death. And death is your work. Stop trying to sell your wounds to fill those emotional voids. It's time to shift. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to do? What do you want to do? I desire you to be the fucking best. Because I desire truly from the bottom of the depths of the deep of the nothingness, I make that absolute. From the nothingness is the absolute. So if you can't take it to the depth and not attach it to anything, that's all you're doing. Every time you go down into your darkness, you're coming up as whatever you need to come up as. Until that point when you don't have to feel. It's the point of you being in the darkness is you no longer feel the need to go back up for air. Because if you notice, the better you get equipped to the darkness, to that depth, the less and less times you got to go up to go get air, to go get food, to go get shit. But once you get comfortable with that aspect and you've done that, that's the healing on the internal. Now it's time to come back out of it. See, when you get stuck too far on one side or the other, remaining not present, that's basically what you keep doing. Because now when you in your darkness and it's dark and you love it and it's all beautiful and shit, you integrated with it. Now the same thought processes come back up and revert. Remember, you inverted everything. That's the integration with your shadow. You inverted with everything. What if I wasn't this? What if I wasn't this? What if I wasn't this? What if my dad didn't do? That's the first step. You still got some stuff you got to do. Because now you got to answer that. That's the whys. Now now it makes more sense. Now I can, because until you do that, you only keep doing the same shit, the same pattern. So what you want to do? I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. If you just coming in, you have to wait for the playback. I love you. We love us. Be fucking great. Peace. Pressing the buttons.